I learned something. This is Rick Mason, and I'm going to talk about a new open source product that I've got interested in called Supabase. And it's changing how the database works in the cloud. So here's how to get me on Twitter. It's a little bit early, about a 10-year-old picture of me, but trying to get it to fit in that template without it chopping my head off completely.
I took that photo.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I got a few
At the that was at demo camp, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Good smile, Rick.
Yeah. Well, I saw him. Normally, I don't see him when he takes my picture, and I saw him, and I did that smile.
Yep, that was at the Michigan Historical Museum.
Okay. Okay. Here's how it all started. If you want a little bit of history, there was a product called Parse, and if you remember that, it added authentication to a flat file database. Then it was followed by Firebase 6 months later. Parse became part of Facebook, and Facebook shut it down. It was a big brouhaha at the time. They open sourced it, but they really only open sourced part of it. And then Firebase sold out to Google, and it's still around. So I guess it's the survivor. But not everybody wants to use a flat file database. I've worked with Mongo before. They have their special places, but a lot of the stuff I happen to write works really, really well with relational databases. So how this all started is one day up on Hacker News, it popped up. I'd never used Postgres. Postgres is kind of a Oracle-like open source database. And I didn't know it, but it supported plugins. Nobody had ever used them, I guess. And one guy wrote a plugin for it to do REST, and they loved it on Hacker News. And there was arguments. Well, yeah, it works. It's slick, but it won't scale. And so they went back and did a whole bunch of tests, and they found out it did scale. A lot of people want to do the traditional. I've written code. I've worked with Taffy, and you know it, you're comfortable with it, but here's something that's you don't have to write any code at all. So there's two guys in Australia that thought, well, if this is possible, what other plugins could you use? Could you totally reimagine what the database layer does? And so they started a company called Supabase, because I think about 1.5 years ago. And it includes the Postgres database. They brought the postgREST plugin. I think they might have actually hired the guy that wrote it. They're working on GraphQL beta. You can use Postgres as a single file database as well, if you want to go that way. They added oAuth, which obviously was to be competing with their predecessors. But then they added S3 style storage buckets. They got edge functions or Lambda serverless. It's based on Dino. Dino, if you're not familiar with it, is written by the fellow that wrote Node, and it's his attempt to fix everything that's wrong with Node. And you get real time via WebSockets, and I think they've got webhooks. I don't know if that's official yet, but you can build chat programs or whatever you need. They got something they call Platform. Every time somebody writes something, they have a user database, and a lot of times you need permissions and everything. So there's like, why not include it in the product? And it's pretty full featured. And then there are some community libraries that have popped up. It's been a very popular project. It's got over 40,000 GitHub stars right now. And the cool thing about it being open source is if you've got a boss that doesn't want to go on the cloud and you'd like to work with things that are the cool kids are doing on Amazon, like S3 buckets or edge functions, you can do it. You can run it on your own server and manage it that way. But what I'm looking at really is their setup, and they make it extremely simple to get started. And they have a free tier that's pretty powerful. And then I think you can step up to like 100,000 users or something for $25 a month. So price shouldn't push you back. Okay, when you sign into Supabase, you just go to supabase.com. You authorize a connection to your GitHub, and then that redirects to app.supabase. We're going to look at a tour. Take a break from the slides here a minute. I just created a new project, a new table, authorization policies and what they're involved in. They're written in plain SQL. Firebase has got their own language, I think, for writing them, and it's kind of complicated, whereas it's a lot simpler if most developers know SQL. And a thing on Supabase called row-level security. So I will move over here to my browser and use the icons here. You can start with home. I have my RH Mason organization, and then the next level down is MMCFUG. And you have a table editor, authentication. More about that later. And storage, SQL, database, and you can edit your tables in there. You can add fields and such. This is edge functions. You got logs up the wazoo. One thing I haven't gotten into at all because there isn't a lot of documentation on it, but you can build reports, and I'm not sure how much power you have, if it's just power to see what's been going on in your app, or if you can actually write reports for your users. You got API. Now, I created a table called items. And this is something so simple, but no one I know has invented it before, is it creates all this code for you. So you can just cut and paste, and there's a copy button there. They don't all work yet, but and you use bash, and you basically you've got the ID here. Let me see if I can get down to read all rows. Okay, so you've got a URL here, and if you just paste it in, it just says, well, I can't do anything. I gotta drag this over again. Yikes. And that's because you have to include an API key and an authorization bearer token. And if you're looking for those, you get hide here, and there's your anonymous token. And for read all rows, we're going to use this API key and this bearer token. And that will allow us to operate here. I've got I think Postman here. Yeah. So I've got 3 records, and you've got the params. You got authorization, that's where the bearer token goes. Body as, I'm not sure what some of the stuff in here is. But you've got to Is it? That's for form data. I was looking for something I cannot find. Okay. So you input all that stuff and you can bring back the records. And if you want to, no, that's not it. I have to try to find this here. I was looking for a post.
Also, you get more tabs to the right, so you can.
I know. Yeah. There. Okay. Yeah, there it is. API key, and then you have content type, application JSON. I can hide this so you can see that a little bit. And then I've got my var key and trying to find out where it, yeah, item 3. Okay. So I can create item 4. And send it. And then if I go back.
And you've got your 201 created, so it said that it worked.
Yep. I've got to go back to get there. Okay. Okay. There. Created item 4. So I'm trying to think if I covered everything I said I was going to cover. I'll be getting into some of the other stuff later. You can set relational tables. I didn't, but you can just right-hand click on the tab, the field, and set up a relationship. Let me go back to PowerPoint now. There. Okay. I got to go back to policies. Okay, I knew I forgot something. You can turn RLS on. And if I turn RLS on, everything I just did would not have worked. And you end up having to have specific keys. You could, for example, create a policy. I'll show it in a minute, where you don't let someone edit any records except their records. If I'd taken the table and added a UUID column and pasted in their key, then only the ones that was there they would be able to edit or even read if you want to enable it that much. And here's new policy. That's how you create a new policy. Okay. Okay. Okay, here's the policy I spoke about. And again, it's pretty simple. Create policy, and you put the title in, and then on items for update using auth.uid, and the column would be user_ID. I said UUID, but that makes it pretty clear and very, very powerful. You can actually tie that with the user's where you can have like an authorization level 7 or whatever, and tie it into things they can't see just by making a CF-HTTP call out to it to get their user ID. And if they're 7 and above, they can see it. If below 7, they can't.
Building some questions in my head, right?
Okay.
Where would I store this UID? Like in their local storage, so that when Nick comes back, he knows he can edit that one record.
I think the way that it works is that's essentially a column in your table.
Okay.
So, let's say you've got this user records or whatever, and then you have like an owner column or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would just match the user's UUID. So that comes from the user authentication piece.
Oh, okay.
So I will go back here and we'll look at buckets. Okay, and I created a bucket mmcfug, and I had a sub bucket of user group, and I uploaded Nick's picture. I can click on that. Come on, load. Yep. Okay. And if I have a
It's sharing the
URL,
PowerPoint, right?
there's Nick. What?
It's not sharing your browser, it's sharing PowerPoint.
Well, son of a gun.
You just gotta, I think, in show in PowerPoint, and then it'll start picking up on your browser.
I was going back and forth
Oh,
before.
really? Oh, okay. Sure,
I got to get Nick and find out why that's happening.
it didn't flip to his browser. He said he was going back and forth before.
Oh, the screen up there isn't changing?
I don't know. He was talking about seeing something in his browser. I was like, wait, I'm still looking at the PowerPoint.
Cancel or exit the PowerPoint?
No, I can see your desktop. All right, good for a minute.
Hit escape. That's weird. No.
No, that's
Here, let's see something.
okay, folks. We're trying to figure out why it didn't allow me to go from PowerPoint back to my
Go
browser.
to this right here.
I got 2 of them.
There.
Okay. Okay.
PowerPoint decided that it was still running or something.
Okay.
It's here out there, Nick.
Hmm?
It's just here out there.
Women's restroom. The door's open.
Okay. I will go back to my browser and drag this darn thing out of the way again, which the users probably cannot see. Okay, this is what I was going over before. In buckets, I have mmcfug bucket, a user group, subdirectory, and I uploaded a picture of Nick, and you can upload pictures there, create folders, you can sort them, view them, and you can also put security on it. So with a policy down here, so if you didn't want people to see your images, you could do that. Like maybe have a PDF in a folder, and if they pay their money, they can see it and download it. Otherwise, they cannot. So sorry about that. I thought I was going on. I'm glad Randy said something here.
Wait.
That is very, very strange.
Like doing its thing. You can probably just keep this open and just switch tabs or switch things there.
Okay. Okay. Now we go to installing the Supabase CLI. I had a lot of problems with this. I got with John Farrar and I said, I'm beaten. I can't get this thing to work. He wasn't able to get it installed. He tried installing it on the WLS, that's where you download Ubuntu inside of Windows to do some stuff, and it worked fine. So Windows 10 supposedly would let you install that according to the website, but we couldn't install it. It would download the stuff, but we couldn't get at it and couldn't launch it. But I did get the new Windows terminal out of that, and wished I had gone to that much, much earlier, because you could configure that thing really nicely. And, you know, we tried to install it from the Microsoft Store. The Microsoft Store says you have to have Windows 11. That's contrary to their own website.
That's weird. I have it on my Windows 10 here.
Okay. Well, we tried.
Yeah.
So I went to lunch and I came back and it had installed all these bits. And one thing John had said before I left was you might try just running it, because maybe what it's looking for has been downloaded. And sure enough, I'd never heard of Scoop. I'm used to installing like JavaScript stuff from like NPM, and Scoop is something new, and I guess it's more powerful, I guess. And you have to set the execution policy, and then once it's installed, it will pull in the API. Now, the only reason I was doing this was because I wanted to have serverless, and unfortunately I didn't get the time today to get all that sorted out. But what you can also do with it is you can run like a mini terminal from your terminal. And if you've got this on your own server, you need to be able to do things like start and stop the database, and, you know, kind of bookkeeping work. And that's what it allows you to do. You don't even need to load this part if you're doing serverless. You know, you can do that just strictly from the command line once these bits have been downloaded. Got me looking at the screen to make sure everything is.
Yep. You're good.
Now, Edge functions, you got installed Docker Desktop, which I'd never worked with before. And I got it installed, but I didn't get all the way. You got to have the CLI, which I just talked about, installed. It uses the Dino framework, and I was somewhat familiar with that. And the functions need to be written in TypeScript, and TypeScript is something that I've held off learning. I had I can't even remember the name of it, an earlier type of TypeScript kind of predecessor that I spent a lot of time on, and it looked like it was gaining traction, and then it wasn't. It fell out. And I was reluctant to do that again, but now I guess Microsoft has endorsed TypeScript as the way to write JavaScript. So it looks like it's maybe becoming a standard. Come on. Now, because I didn't get it done, here is how they write a hello function. Basically, you type, you know, in the terminal, Supabase functions new hello, and that will create a bare function for you. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. And then you deploy it on the Dino network, which I think really under the covers, I don't know for sure, but it might be Cloudflare. It gets deployed all around the world. And you need your product reference or project reference, I'm sorry. And you can get that from the Supabase terminal. And then if you want to run it locally, you can do a Supabase init, and that brings everything in, and you can do it locally as a developer. And a lot of times maybe that's a little faster if you're developing a whole bunch of functions, but if you're writing one, I'm not sure you need to bring it down to your local machine. Okay, this, I'll just let you study it, but it's a pretty simple function, but it's a getting started type of thing. And it looks a little different compared to, you know, different JavaScript that I have written. But I guess, again, it's something you got to get used to. And you can get it to run hello and then type your name /Rick and it'll say hello, Rick. I think with the database doing so much, serverless maybe makes even more sense. You're not writing a lot of code to do CRUD. In fact, actually, I think if you got it set up right, your designer could do everything as far as CRUD. They're cut and pasting things and having one small JavaScript function, for example. Okay, now we're talking about platform, which is the way they manage users. You get login and permissions, and what I didn't mention is you could also have a thing called a magic login, where someone is emailed a link and excuse me, then they use that to log into the program. Again, you have the ability to see who sees what, and that's kind of powerful. However, if you're an admin, I think what Randy said earlier, if you have access to the database, you can change things and see everything. Just gotta get Randy locked out or something.
Me, no.
Now the real time, I didn't spend a lot of time with that. I've never written a real time thing. I know that you have worked with that a little bit, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Did you write like a chat program with it, or what do you use it for?
I did a ton of things. As far as demos go, we use it, so the WebSockets and all that type of stuff. Like we've got a text messaging application that we use. I've done game servers with it. We do real-time communications with for like cable TV stuff and all that. So 90% of my stuff's all WebSocket stuff.
Okay, so maybe you'll understand this. You have three basic ways you can interact with it. Broadcast, and you just send out the messages. Presence, they call it synchronized shared state. Well, basically what that means in a video that I saw, the guy said, we know when you're online and we know when you're offline.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe a better way of explaining presence. And then there's a part of Postgres called CDC, and I'm sorry, I don't know what CDC stands for, but that basically listens to the changes, and while you're having a chat, it can be logged to the database.
So remember way back when we used to talk about BlazeDS?
Yep.
So somebody makes, so the problem it tries to solve and what this actually does is you have, let's say, 10 people open to a page that has the, one view of the database.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody goes in there and modifies record number 1. Well, what happens when somebody goes in there, modifies, like say Randy goes in there now and modifies record number 1? Well, Randy's is probably going to overwrite. He may not know that Rick has gone in there and changed that because he hasn't refreshed the page or whatever.
Right.
So what this is trying to solve is when you go in there and modify, it actually updates Randy's copy in real time on his screen.
What if he tries to go in and modify it while I'm modifying it?
There's a way you can do locking and that type of stuff, but essentially, because you're communicating what you're doing on your screen, he can see that as well.
Okay, because
So
I've seen software where I go to edit something and it would say this record's locked.
Yep. But the more common use case is, as you're modifying it, it's modifying his version too, so he can see you're actually modifying it.
See you're typing. Okay.
Yep. Or modifying, or like record level changes, that type of stuff.
Well, if you ever got into this for the first time, I think this would be the easiest way to do it because you're not having to write a whole bunch of code, and you're just calling out to URLs to get a lot of this done. Not exactly no code, but it simplifies things. Okay, one thing that I think is very important, and I'm going to maybe editorialize here, is there were people criticizing that they went with Dino because Dino is, I guess, kind of cutting edge. Why didn't they go with Node or PHP or whatever? They wrote it as a plugin, and you can create other plugins. So these are all the languages. that have already, and most of this in the last 6 months, it's exceedingly active. And Flutter is the Dart language, by the way. I didn't put Dart, but I think more people know Flutter. I know they do a lot of Apple stuff with that. And I'm going to ask, why not CFML? And I think it can be done. It's just a little more involved for me to try to get it done. But I pledge out here, anybody watching this video, if they're interested, get a hold of me. I think that right now, today, you'd use Fuseless, which is Pete Freitag's open source software, along with Lucy. And the only reason I say that is because Adobe had the feature of serverless, and then they withdrew it. And they've got a new version coming up sometime in 2023, I think. And will they enable it? And then the other issue is licensing. If you're a small fry like me, I can't afford the cloud licensing. And Lucy, again, the price is right. They've said they're going to come up with serverless at their meeting 2 years ago. CF Camp, or was it 3 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
A long time ago. And there hasn't been anything said since, but they're working on Lucy 6. But right now you could take the current version of Lucy and Fuseless, and again, I'm not sure how, but I think you could enable it so that you could code in Supabase with CFML. And it's something that, again, kind of makes me excited. I'm willing to help someone that wants to do it to make it happen, if it means writing all the docs, doing the testing, helping out in any way that I can, and joining all these other languages, because I think CFML should be a full member of the language community. And I think it helps CFML every time somebody looks and sees a project like this and says, oh, I know Cold Fusion. So, okay, here is how to reach me. And I'm on Twitter at Rick_Mason, and then Rick at mmcfug.org. Thank you very much. Either you guys have any questions?
Not so. You mentioned that there was like the license, or like, usage fees and things like that. Do they have like a free tier or something?
They have
like
a free tier.
Okay. What does that like cap out at?
Let me do a. I was going to have a slide on that, and I didn't. And I don't know if I can find it real quickly, but I will try. Sticky. Okay. Okay. Here is the pricing. 500 megabyte database, 1 gigabyte of file storage, 2 gigabyte of bandwidth every month, 50 meg in file uploads, social OAuth providers. I'm not sure what that means. 50,000 monthly users, 500,000 and edge function invocations. No support except community support, but that's $0 per project, and you were allowed 2 projects.
Okay.
And $25 a month gets it up to 8 gig database, 100 gigabyte of file storage, 50 gigabyte of bandwidth, 5 gigabyte file uploads, 100,000 active users, and 2 million edge function invocations, along with daily backups, and they keep the logs for 7 days, along with email support. Now, they actually, if you don't sign in once a week, they will actually pause your project if you're in the free. And it doesn't disappear. It's just that when you need it again, you have to log in and wait. And I'm not sure how long you have to wait while they go retrieve it from storage someplace and reload everything for you.
Gotcha.
So again, if it's more than the $25 pro account, then you get enterprise. And they add a bunch of stuff for enterprise if you need SSO or SAML, or they give you an SLA. I would think they give you an SLA for pro, but I don't see it. So
Okay.
they'll even give you on-premise support. Wow. Companies pay a lot of money if they got an engineer from Supabase on-premise. So I don't think there's any reason that somebody listening to this can't try this, even if it's for a small project or a personal project or a company project that's got to be rolled out real fast. It might not be around long, where your boss says, sure, go with it. I think it changes how we develop, and that scares some people. They're used to writing code, or they got code they can cut and paste and quickly get up, and it's easier. They've got people that, again, that are all excited about no code, and I'm working on a project with no code, but this is maybe call it an easy code for developers. Now, Postgres takes a little getting used to because the syntax on SQL is a little different, but it's not that big a thing compared to MySQL.
Well, and it doesn't really look like you even really are doing any any SQL commands in the background, really, like a whole lot. It's all obfuscated through those API commands.
Right.
So
I'm racking my brain, Rick, trying to figure out like when and what situation or project would I use this on? Like you mentioned, like small projects. Like what are you thinking? Anything from small to huge, or?
Yeah, you could go huge, but obviously if you're cautious or conservative, you're not going to put the first big project on it. If you're a 25-year-old developer, you might, but then it might blow up in your face. I don't think this will blow up in your face, but if you, again, like mobile project or something, mobile backend doesn't require a lot of data to be stored. It's a matter of just getting comfortable with it. The more comfortable you get with it. If I was starting my startup all over again, I definitely would be using this. But I've got all the code written.
I'm thinking, what kind of like IT policies would Nick try to shove in my face, tell me why I can't store my data about donors or whatever have you?
You'd want to store your data about donors on something like this?
Right. I'm sorry, I get that MSU hat going on, like, Jesus, I'd never get that through purchasing, you know what I mean?
Well, on that, think about it.
Right, yeah.
One policy thing on there, all your donor data is out there.
Yeah.
Then the school down the street's going to go and hit up all your donors.
Right. Or I could be that's why I was like, what project or situation that I find myself in? Like you said, a 25-year-old trying to get something up, boom, boom, boom. I'm just hoping that whatever that 25-year-old learns here is transferable. I don't know why Rick's picking up 25-year-olds or something. I was 25 at one time.
We all were 25 at one time. You just want to rock the world. Actually, if you had this on your own server, Randy, I don't know that I'd be as worried about. You can lock Postgres down pretty securely. Yeah, I guess you could write a policy and not think about a what if or testing or, but I guess you could do it and have somebody penetration test for you. If they can't get into it, chances are they can't get into it,
That whole row level security, I'm trying to think, you can't do that in Microsoft SQL, right? You can do
Technically you can, but nobody uses the SQL Server for that piece. You always, you control that access with your business layer, and and that's what they're doing on their side too. They're not actually having it as Postgres as being the security level. They're doing that through the business layer.
I think there's a lot of enterprises that use Postgres. There's a lot of developers like it.
Our phone system runs on it.
Does it?
You know,
That's because it's AT&T.
I mean, Avaya, but still.